Good afternoon. Ukraine Media Center here. My name is Alina Frolana. I will be the moderator of today's event. Today is September 4, and we'll start our work with discussion of quite an important topic because now we are in the first week of September. We're approximating winter. The temperature started falling, and we'll know about the continuous drone attacks, the continuation of combat operations, and remembering the previous winters, we understand that it's important to be prepared both to heating season and to be prepared to yet another winter to survive with stable or unstable power supplies. So joining us in the studio is Mr. Yurii Boiko, the member of the Ukrenergo Supervisory Board. So let's discuss it. Are we prepared for the winter season of 2025-2026? What's going on with the infrastructure and how this infrastructure is being protected against the attacks that Russia doesn't cease? Good afternoon. Yeah, we're really living during the year 4 of the full-scale invasion, and it affects the way of preparation to the winter season in the energy sector. So let me give you a general characteristics of the way this preparation is being done. It's made up of a number of tasks, including traditional ones that we used to perform even during peacetime, because the winter season is the season of heavy operation of equipment, and the energy technicians were always preparing, and this preparation always included the necessity to fulfill the scheduled maintenance. Every company, every business, depending on their sector, had different schedules of maintenance. For example, heat supply companies, they fulfill this task, not always pleasant for the citizens, as the inspection of mainway pipes using high pressure, which results in leaks and breakage, but that's their task to identify the bottlenecks, to remove them in order not to come across the emergency works during winter period. When it comes to network companies, there's an active clearing of lines during warm period in order to avoid the breakage of lines in case of wind bursts. When it comes to standard tasks, we can mention active accumulation of petrol reserves and provisions, along with coal provisions for the companies supplying heat. The basic fuel is the gas, and the accumulation of gas is their fundamental task. Now that we're waging a war, it requires critical analysis when it comes to sufficiency of this resource for successful heating season. And of course, the war added a number of exotic tasks related to organization of works on physical protection of equipment, because that's exactly the competence of the utility companies, energy technicians, the necessity to protect the most vulnerable pieces of equipment. That's a priority task, and Ukrenergo probably advanced the most when it comes to completion phase compared to the rest of our colleagues. And during the last 2 years, we have been building the network of distributed generation, which should ensure the flexibility of the system, and on the regional level to ensure significant reliability of power supply in critical situations, specifically in critical situations, because it's clear that during the scheduled operation or regular operation of the network, of the grid, the mainway generation will ensure the power supply to all of the consumers. But if any critical situations arise due to combat operations, we should have more solutions, and distributed generation is one of such solutions for the regions when it comes to the flexibility of the system. Overall, also on our agenda is to ensure the reserve power sources. Don't confuse it with distributed generation. Those are way smaller devices that ensure operations of critical facilities, and this work, at least based on the reports, was done a year and a half or 2 years ago, but still we all have to remember that we have to have the reserve power sources, and the reserve of fuel in order to operate this power source is one of the important steps on the way of preparation to the heating season for all of the critical infrastructure facilities. And in this regard, we've done a great job. I would like to believe that we will not have to check all of this broad range of works on practice, but being guided by this said, if you want peace, prepare for the war. So I think that this is the critical element of preparation during the war. Yeah, but we keep seeing that the infrastructure is being damaged. It cannot remain undamaged during the war. But do we have a sufficient reserve of the spare parts to replace the damaged parts? And on behalf of all of the citizens of Ukraine, I would like to thank you, all of the energy technicians, all of your personnel who resumed power supply almost immediately after the strikes. Well, I can talk on behalf of the company that I represent. We obviously understand that even having probably the best system of physical protection, passive physical protection of our critical equipment, to minimize or to totally avoid any consequences of the strikes using the passive protection measures is impossible. It's obvious that drones and missiles will keep incoming to our facilities, and in conditions like that, on one hand, we have to protect the most costly equipment, the equipment that takes long to manufacture, but you cannot cover the territory of a number of football fields at a time. But we have to ensure the operations that allow us to resume operations promptly after the strikes. The company has a significant reserve of spare parts, and basically lately, like within the last 2 to 3 weeks, now that the enemy started active shelling of our facilities, including Ukrenergo facilities in Sumy region, there were cases of damage of equipment resulting from drone strikes. And by now, we were able to accomplish the repairs within 1 working day. Obviously, I cannot undertake the responsibility and promise that this is the pace that we will be able to maintain in future, because it directly depends on the amount of damage. But in my opinion, that's quite an illustrative example that allows us to understand that first, the people work intensely with understanding of the situation we live in, and on the other hand, the available equipment that allows us to accomplish such repairs in a prompt manner. Generally, in my opinion, the closest winter will be the continuation, the next winter will be the continuation of the war of our people against Russian missiles and drones. So far, we've been winning this war and keeping situation under control. Hope this is going to be the case in the future. Okay, thank you. You've touched upon the regions that are closer to the front lines, and we're seeing the situation is different in Kherson and Sumy region, for example. Can you fulfill the repair works on those territories close to the front lines?
I will probably not let out a secret when I say that these types of works are, of course, harder to conduct in those territories, and we know that the enemy attacks directly, deliberately the teams of energy workers, and in this way they are trying to prevent even attempts to restore critical energy infrastructure. I'm pretty sure that this is a prominent example of the Russian genocidal policy that is trying to create such conditions in the near frontline territories that are not suitable for life, you know. And but I want to emphasize that the works are still conducted. The restoration repair works. They continue. They actually keep continuing every day, because every day we have tasks that we need to attend to, current tasks, and the number of end consumers that we managed to return the energy to is quite impressive. And in some of the towns, settlements, it's really, to be honest with you, a question if it is possible to efficiently prepare for the heating season. That's why we need to understand in some of the cases the evacuation will be the only way to go through this winter and to keep one's health and life, you know. So this passive protection, it's, as I understand it, it's been installed some time ago. So what are results? Are there any? Yes, we're planning. The company is planning to build more physical protection facilities. So what is an electrical plant? This is something very big, like 20, 30 hectares. And our task is unrealistic in terms of trying to cover the whole territory. So this is why we are focusing on critical elements. So the most important among them is transformers that were aimed by the enemy in starting at the beginning of the war. Also, this protection, protection facility or assembly is preventing the overcurrent on the network, and this is and just basically cuts off the electricity in critical situations. On the other hand, the construction works has been completed, and right now we are building the second line of the second batch of the electrical facilities protection. The complete building, complete construction will be complete somewhere around the beginning or middle of the next year. Also, it is quite prone to different factors like attacks, enemy attacks that are resulting in stoppage of works, and let's talk about another aspect of protection. We know that there are cyber attacks going on constantly. Are there any steps in this direction? Thank you for this question. Yes, you're completely right. With the beginning of the full-scale war, the enemy accomplished a certain number of cybernetic attacks against Ukrenergo company, and I will say you as I did not mistake when I said the number of the attacks was thousands, hundreds, and the complexity of those attacks has increased immensely. That's what needs to be said about them. And sometimes, sometimes the simplest cybernetic, like DDoS attacks, they could be a sign of a more wide attack. And in my opinion, this is my subjective point of view. We have one of the best system of cybernetic protections in our company, built than in any other company in Ukraine, and the efficiency is evidenced by the results. It's prevented quite a lot of attacks from the enemy during the period of its existence. There is another aspect to the energy operation during in the war conditions. We are working with Europe now. Is everything fine, basically, in terms of energetic cooperation with Europe? Will we receive aid of some sort if need be? Yes, let's recall some of the more critical aspects of energy sphere, like gas and other heating carriers. The risks are present both in gathering, in accumulation of coal, and in accumulation of gas. The task of accumulation of gas for the beginning of November is around 13 billion cubic meters of gas, and this is comparable to the similar date last year. And the technical and financial possibilities together with Naftogaz of Ukraine, the potential for covering the needs of our energy consumers are quite satisfying as of right now, and we can conclude that there is enough both technical and financial components of the energy operation base core, and we can look with confidence to the fact of successful passage of the winter season, but we need not to forget the risk of the military attacks, because it is still a possibility. And for example, last year during the Russian attacks, we needed to emergently arrange deliveries from the Western countries in order to cover for the losses. And these kinds of steps are supported by the existence of our gas storage, and also the level of gas is in this infrastructure keeps at approximately the same level, and if the risks will rise, the amount of gas that we are storing in our storages will need to rise. It will need to be reviewed. It will need a review, basically, and it will need to be done in the winter when we're at the highest consumption levels, and the price, of course, will be higher. So what will be necessary to do is to find a gas with a suitable price, because in the winter the prices for the gas are higher naturally. So as of right now, it's enough. It's enough gas right now, and also, the only risk factor that we need to take into account is military one.
In the coal sector, the reserves are about 200,000 tons for the winter period. It's the reserve that would last 2 months, but we have to understand that it's about the maximum amount that we can accumulate at our power plants, because the standard process contemplates the supplies of this resource. So that's why we have prepared the provisions, but the regular supplies are at integral condition in order to avoid interruptions of power supply. Currently, the biggest supplier of coal is Pavlograd district, which is currently under constant shelling. So we have to be conscious that there is a risk in this area too, and in case the situation deteriorates, probably we will need to engage imported resources, I mean coal. But currently the situation looks suitable. The reserves are more than sufficient for traditional winter, but in war conditions we at least have to consider this risk option, and we always have to have a plan B. And for what I know from my discussions with colleagues from other energy companies, they have this plan B. So when it comes to fuel reserves, I would probably start here without delving deep into details. Okay, so when it comes to parallel operation with European system, well, the parallel work has been continuing since March 16, 2022. It is on without any emergency situations. The dispatchers, they maintain the regime of operations. What does it mean? It means that the amount of energy leaks between Europe and Ukraine is within the agreed corridor, which means that either we balance the system by ourselves quite successfully, or in case of commercial flows of energy, for example, procured by Ukrainian consumers, the system is still in balance. So basically, the balance of those flows is within the corridor, which evidences the balanced nature of operation of the system. So basically, we're staying in this good balance, but I would like to focus on something else. The fact that we've joined INSOE power grid allowed us to launch the commercial flows of electric power without influence of political risks. So with all due respect to the presidents and prime ministers of other countries, those flows are in compliance with the clear market rules of the European Union, and within the last couple of weeks, I think it would be interesting to hear for your listeners. Ukraine actively exports electric power, and it was resulted from a number of factors. For example, Energo is already past equator of their scheduled maintenance, and the night temperatures have not fallen drastically, but still the temperatures are relieving, and people don't use, for example, air conditioners as much, which results in relief of the power generation facilities, and the amount of exports is more than 1,000 megawatts per hour. That's a significant amount. And during the month of June and July, well, in June we were a net exporter. So during night maximus, when our resources were not sufficient, we were procuring electric power on market terms, ensuring uninterrupted power supply for our consumers who may not have noticed it, but this is the synchronous breathing of the neighboring markets, and the market rules satisfy the needs of all the parties, and any political insinuations that we're ensuring the uninterrupted power supply for you is not quite true, because you either sell it on terms beneficial to you or you buy it on terms beneficial to you. Those are commercially attractive operations rather than support for somebody. Okay, and then the last questions before we proceed to the questions from the floor about the indebtedness. We traditionally understand that the consumer debt, and I'm talking about both commercial and private consumers, well, is there, it's been widely discussed. So to what extent this burden has grown during the war, and how do you manage to compensate this debt burden? Well, the matter of debt is probably one of the most difficult issues in the energy market within the last couple of years. But I have to mention that this year the company has gotten a more or less balanced tariff, which can already ensure that the debt is at least not supposed to be growing. Why am I calling it a balanced tariff? Because when the natural monopolies set the tariff for the upcoming year, they take into consideration a number of assumptions, and the fairness of this tariff depends on whether those assumptions will come true. In case of Ukrenergo, we have to understand that the most critical factors that influence whether the assumptions were right is the amount of electric power supply, which directly depends on the economic conditions. And if we overlay the war risks, it would include the damage of equipment that would result in reduction of power supply. And half of the costs of Ukrenergo are the costs that are being collected as transit costs in order to pay to the guaranteed buyer their green tariff services. And as we remember, the legislators adopted the green tariffs, and the growth of foreign currency rate only increases the obligations of the company to compensate the difference between the power supply and green tariffs, which I I'm reminding you, is tied to the Yurii rate. So again, I don't know what it will all result in. So far, I'm seeing that there is the reduction of power supply through the networks of the company, and I can see that the Yurii rate exceeds the expectations that were set in the government budget, and as a result, modeling of tariff by the regulator. So those are all the factors that may result in some insignificant deficit. But this year, the tariff was potentially the most balanced, and as a result, this year, we maintain a pretty high level of settlements with green energy producers. On top of that, the company made a step forward to the consumer that allowed repaying some parts of the debt, and about 10 billion, more than 10 billion were forwarded to repay the debt. And as a result, I think about 16 billion hryvnia of debt were paid to the guaranteed buyer. Obviously, there is some number of agreements when it comes to financial resources supply from foreign financial organizations to raise investments in construction of the balancing capacities. My expectations are that by the end of this year, we are supposed to be having not only a roadmap, but the finalized solutions to solve this issue. On top of that, the government has adopted a number of regulations, among which I would emphasize the regulation of the functional suppliers that in future is supposed to result in reduction of debt that continues growing in the energy market. What does it mean in practice? There is a number of consumers that don't get disconnected even in event they don't pay for their consumption due to a number of reasons such as water canals, coal mines, and other specific companies. And during winter periods, such debt may grow as high as 800 million hryvnia per month. And sorting out the logic of such consumers should reduce this number, this figure significantly. Obviously, we cannot bring it down to zero, but if we reduce the pace of debt growth at least thrice or 4 times, we will be able to keep the debt growth within certain corridor, because Ukrenergo, as a conductor of the market, can efficiently raise foreign or external resources and use it to cover their debt in front of the generators without forcing or enforcing indebtedness on their on those companies that are in debt to them, and it allows them in their turn, those companies, to restore their capacities, their technical capacities. And the role of Ukrenergo in this sense is difficult to overestimate. The works are still underway. In this context, I would like to mention the procedure of exit from technical default the company is in, and that's a mandatory precondition to resume active funding from foreign companies. Well, if we have any questions on the floor, please introduce yourself and ask your questions.
Як Суспільне новини?
Anna Железняк, Суспільне новини. You mentioned the situation in Pokrovsk, for example. Is it possible to currently tell how many settlements most probably or already determined not to be able to enter the heating season prepared, and are there any steps around this question? Well, this question needs to be addressed more to the Ministry of Regional Development, because this is their competence, and they are collecting reports from regional administrations or local administrations, and are making decisions about possible evacuation from this or that settlement. Of course, I do orient and I understand what you are asking, but it will be more correct to get this information from the ministry. This will be not only right, but also officially correct. Any more questions? Then thank you again. I would like to ask thank you again for the level of transparency that you are showing us as a representative of the Ukrenergo, and we understand that the corporate rule and governing are allowing to collect more investments, more funds, and we are hoping that this winter will be warm enough to help us. Thank you, good and good luck. We had Yurii Boiko with us, the member of the overseeing council of the Ukrenergo. Thank you for your questions.